Rob G, we want you to jump in because there's all this, we know there's a problem in the NFL with black assistant coaches getting head coaching jobs.
Right.
Eric Bieniemy's had like 15,000 interviews. And despite other players, other coaches, I say, having less experience, less success as coordinators, they've gotten jobs and opportunities, but Eric Bieniemy hasn't. And then you have some, crazy people, Meshuggah on the radio here, who will sit there and swear up and down that there isn't a race issue in the NFL. Because there is. They had to put in the Rooney Rule, Allen,
right.
to force owners to interview black applicants.
Right.
Just think about for a guy to sit on the radio and tell you that there's no issue with race in the NFL. It's just mind-boggling.
Right.
Why would you have a Rooney Rule? Is there a Rooney Rule in Major League Baseball? No. Is there one in the NBA? No.
And teams still getting around that whole rule.
Right.
When they go, well, this was the guy we really wanted to hire. We identified him as being the guy we want.
If you remember in Detroit, when Matt Millen was the general manager, everybody, the cat got out of the bag that they were going to hire Steve Mariucci.
Yes.
And then the league was like, you can't do that, right? It was already out. And black assistant coaches refused to come to Detroit for an interview because it was a sham.
Right.
They could have come and got the free hotel room and the steak dinner and all that, but they knew there was no job. Everybody and their uncle knew that Mooch was getting that job.
Right.
So it was fraudulent.
Right.
And now what's happening, and Rob G's going to explain, is you have head coaches again who feel compelled to give black assistants a token gesture. And I just want to get your take on this once Rob G gives us.
Well, you kind of explained it there, Rob, but it's not even just an NFL issue because, as you mentioned, a couple of weeks ago, Titans head coach Mike Vrabel promoted longtime assistant coach Terrell Williams, who was black, to acting head coach several days before their first preseason game. He installed the game plan, determined how much the starters would play, and Vrabel said it was a good practice for him, assuming he ever wants to get an NFL head coaching job. Well, Lane Kiffin, head coach at Ole Miss, took it a step further the following week. He promoted their wide receiver coach, or excuse me, their wide receiver coach, Derrick Nix, to temporary head coach for their scrimmage for 24 hours. They had a big Ole Miss, basically a spring game in the summer, and he was head coach for there. And he added on specifically afterwards when asked about it, he said that it's really unfortunate that between the SEC and the Big 12, we have no minority head coaches, and this was his way of kind of doing his part to change that.
Alan, where are you on these gestures by college coach, NFL, to, hey, buddy, why don't you run the game plan for the day, or let me turn over the reins to you, or whatever. I mean, and especially games that don't count. Like these are just like some meaningless preseason. And I'm not trying to totally disrespect the notion, but where are you on this?
This reminds me of a little bit. Now you have to take your kids to work day.
Right.
It's kind of like, let's take my black coaches to work day and let them be head coach for a day.
Right.
Did you have a great time? Did you have a good experience?
Did you understand how we did that?
Yeah,
here?
exactly.
Let me see. Like, you make up 70% of the players out there, but you can't totally understand football.
Right.
You can play it, but you can't.
Right, you can't understand. It's the old rule that even for the longest time when they wouldn't let black quarterbacks have an opportunity in pro football to play, to become head, the leader team. But yeah, the opportunities are not there, and it's a joke when and I understand even to some extent when you're really just starting out and you really don't honestly have a chance to get a job yet like that. If you want to just go through the interview process to see what it's like, I can get that.
Yeah, I don't know.
But there's a certain point that later on in your career, like, dude, what else do I have to do?
Right, and this is my issue. Practice interviews. If I was I'm a columnist, and they say, hey, come to the Washington Post so you could practice interview. There's no job for you, but we want to give.
Right.
I'm not going.
Right.
Okay, I'm just not.
Right.
Because it's insulting to me.
Because you should have enough friends to be able to tell you what that experience is like anyway, and exactly. I can walk you through it.
You can walk me through and let me know. Like I mentor a lot of young people. I'll tell them what to be prepared for, what kind of questions they need to ask. Right. Challenge the interviewer. Don't just sit there and just like,
exactly.
yeah. You know what I mean? Things like that. But I don't want to be. Don't waste my time. I don't need a free meal or for you to check a box and say, "Oh yeah, well at least we had a black guy in." We're not hiring him, but we talked to somebody.
Like I said, it's more like, oh, well, Rob's in New York, so I can go get a free steak dinner and a free plane trip and the hotel and hang out with Rob. I'll look at it as a nice paid for trip, but it is insulting. It's getting to the point that and then it comes out that some of the players, I guess, were complaining about Eric Bieniemy, about saying that he's really tough on them. Well, you don't hear those same complaints about other coaches in the league who have been tough on players for years. But because Eric Bieniemy is tough on players, it all of a sudden became an issue.
No, and that's another issue, 100%. And then they use that against him.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and then if he wasn't that guy, then it would be, oh, Eric Bieniemy's running a country club. Oh,
right.
He's so soft. Like
right.
You can't win.
You can't win.
I don't know about. I feel I'm against the Rooney Rule. Okay, Chris and I argue about it a lot. I'm against it.
I'm totally.
I'm sorry. I just don't insult me.
All right.
I don't want a token interview.
Right.
Is there a job? Here's my resume. If I'm not good enough, Alan, with my resume, don't bring me in.
Right.
There are plenty of guys who are talented enough. We saw what was his name? Joe Judge was like a special teams coach. Didn't have he would never a coordinator. He gets the Giants head coaching job. How?
Right. I think the problem is when you start talking about playing pro football, it becomes a situation where you don't have much power sometimes as a player. But I would think on the collegiate level, if I was an athlete in the collegiate level and I was highly recruited and I wanted to go to school there and that was an issue to me, I would say I'm not coming to your school. I'm not going to play for your team unless I see better representation amongst your coaching staff.
See, there you go. You and I are on the same page.
Now, once you start losing the athletes, it is going to change.
That is it, Alan, because once the players say, nah, I'm not going to go to an organization that doesn't give, and this is the big thing.
Right.
Until you start to do that and make them feel it where players aren't going and there's not opportunity for people after the fact, that's when there's an issue. And that's when you start to lose people.
If some teams in the SEC all of a sudden aren't getting that athlete anymore, those kinds of athletes anymore, and you start losing on a national scale all of a sudden, it'll change. It will most certainly change. And
it's a tough spot to be in as far as black head coaches. I'm not saying that because the league is 75% black that 75% of the coaches should be black, but it shouldn't be the minuscule numbers we have.
Right. Like Lane Kiffin said, the fact that there is not one head coach in that whole.
Wasn't where was Sly Kroom? You remember he was at Mississippi or something? You remember he was a head coach, like I think the only one.
Yeah.
Was it Mississippi and SEC?
I believe it might have been, yeah. But yeah, it's an embarrassing
Mississippi State. That's what I was going to say.
It's an embarrassing representation.
Yeah, it really is. And if you're the NFL, this still shouldn't be an issue in 2023. It just shouldn't. Eric Bieniemy, if nothing else, okay, deserves an opportunity that I've seen some other guys who just haven't even done anything. Just because you like them, because they talk a big game, or do you want results? Right. Say whatever you want. He won 2 Super Bowls. Well, he didn't call the plays. Well, Andy Reid called the plays. But then the other 3 guys who were there before them all got head coaching jobs, and Andy Reid was calling the plays on those as offensive coordinator too. So why didn't apply to those guys?
Right. I didn't think that Caldwell at the Lions got a fair shake. I mean, he did
a good job for the Lions.
And it's like, okay, this is a real short stint of letting this guy try to put you in the right direction.
It was definitely a mistake.